Welcome to the second episode of the fourth series. In this episode, we're going to explore probably one of the most controversial themes in modern science with regard to the previous three themes of well-being we discussed: neuroplasticity, epigenetics, and bidirectional highways. But I do think it is one which is very powerful and has extraordinarily important implications, and that is every human being comes into the world with innate basic goodness. Before we begin, let me once again remind you to continue to ask yourself two foundational questions as you have hopefully done throughout the previous series. The first question is, why is it that some people are more vulnerable to life's slings and arrows and others are more resilient? The second question is, how can we nurture this quality and promote more human flourishing to promote more resilience? Now, since this is the most controversial, let me give you one little data point of how scientists explore this. The research study published in the Nature International Journal titled Social Evaluation by Preverbal Infants by Hamlin and others, dated 2007, documented a profound discovery. When 6-month-old babies were shown two very short cartoon video clips, it was revealed which clip they preferred. The first clip showed a ball trying to roll up a hill. After two failed attempts, a second ball, the helper, helped the first ball by pushing it from the bottom of the hill up to the top of the hill. The second clip also showed a ball trying to roll up a hill, but this time, a second ball, the hinderer, at the top of the hill, pushed the first ball down each time it attempted to reach the top. Which of these do you think a 6-month-old baby prefers? How do you know that? How can you ask a 6-month-old baby which it prefers? One way is we can look at the extent to which the baby smiles. And it turns out that babies smile much more to the first clip compared to the second clip. Also, scientists can monitor the eye movements of the babies. They can use infrared eye tracking technology to pinpoint precisely at where and for how long a baby is looking. And it turns out 90% of infants prefer to look at the first video compared to the second video. They show more gaze fixation toward the first compared to the second. Now, this is part of a large corpus of literature that is growing, which all points in the same direction. It suggests that qualities like kindness and altruism are there from the start. But we think of kindness in a way that is similar to the way scientists think of language. We're all born for a propensity for language. But in order for that propensity to be expressed, it needs to be nurtured. We need to be raised in a normal linguistic community. And it may well be the same for kindness. We all come into the world with these seeds of kindness. And the reason why this is particularly important is that we do practices to nurture these qualities. And when we do that, we're not creating these qualities out of nowhere, but rather we are nurturing a basic characteristic of our mind that all human beings share. So, from this background and this foundation, I formulated a framework for understanding well-being that is deeply informed by both contemplative traditions and modern science. This is a framework which holds that well-being is comprised of four major constituents, and each of these constituents or components shows plasticity can actually cultivate these qualities. I'm going to go through each of these four qualities and say a little bit about them. Before I do, let me just say, this is an urgent need. This is not a luxury. But I think the data is pointing us in a direction saying this is a necessity. There's lots of data we can show, but let me just give you a couple of tidbits. First, let's look at the percentage of youth in the U.S. between 12 and 17 years of age who experienced major depression in the year before, from 2004 to 2015. Among kids 16 to 17 years of age, more than 15% of the population is experiencing this diagnosable major depression. And you can also see the gender difference. These differences are profoundly different in boys and girls, with girls suffering at about a rate twice what boys suffer. And that gender difference emerges right around adolescence and persists that way for the remainder of life. These differences are present in every Western country in which this has been investigated. And if you look at suicides in adolescence, what we see is that the numbers are going in the wrong direction, in an upward trend. So this is the bad news. But when Martin Luther King gave his famous speech in the 60s, the title of that speech was not, "I Have a Nightmare." So we can have a vision, a dream of what is possible. We need to underscore that well-being is an urgent public health need. Now, let's talk about the 4 components of well-being. The first component is awareness, which includes attention, self-awareness, meta-awareness, and focus. Meta-awareness is the quality of knowing what your mind is doing, which may sound strange, but how many of us have had the experience of reading a book where you're actually reading each page, each word on a page? Then you turn to another page and maybe a third page. And after that, you realize you absolutely have no idea what you just read. Your mind is somewhere else. A famous study that was conducted not too long ago was done by querying people via text on a smartphone. People were asked 3 questions. The first question was, what are you doing right now? Checking off a list of activities. The second question, where's your mind right now? The third, right at this moment, how happy or unhappy are you? It turns out that the average American adult is not paying attention to what he or she is doing 40% of the time. That is huge. I am of the strong conviction that we can do better. Just imagine a world where we can show up and be more fully present. So awareness is a key ingredient in that. And when people were asked, how happy or unhappy are you? It was revealed that when the participants were distracted, they were significantly less happy. The title of this scientific paper is "A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind" by Killingsworth and others, dated 2010. The second component is connection. This refers to the qualities that promote successful social relationships. Qualities like kindness, empathy, maintaining a positive outlook. And again, these are qualities that can be cultivated. In research done with teachers where they were trained in these qualities, it was found that measures of implicit bias, which are the driving force of the achievement gap in the United States today, can be significantly reduced. So this is a great practical import. The third component really is insight into ourselves, into how this narrative that all carry around about ourselves, how it all works. When we become really fixed on this narrative, when it becomes rigid, we become less resilient. At the very extreme, there are people who have a narrative that is filled with negative self-beliefs, and they actually believe that narrative. That is a prescription for depression. And so part of well-being is cultivating a healthy relationship to this narrative. The third component is insight, which includes self-knowledge, decreased stickiness, and healthy sense of self. Finally, the fourth component of well-being is purpose, clear direction, a sense that life has meaning, everyday tasks aligned with purpose. It turns out that among people in their 70s, 80s, 90s, sense of purpose is the single most important psychological predictor of longevity. So it actually has real biological significance. These are the 4 components of well-being. They each can be nurtured. We know a little bit about how to do that. Different people may require different kinds of strategies. But this is a major area of future scientific research. But this all leads to the inevitable conclusion that well-being can actually be cultivated. Again, I want to end now with a quote from a book that was on the bestseller list for some time that was written by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. He said, "The systematic training of the mind, the cultivation of happiness, the genuine inner transformation, by deliberately selecting and focusing on positive mental states and challenging negative mental states, is possible because of the very structure and function of the brain. But the wiring in our brains is not static, not irrevocably fixed. Our brains are also adaptable." I want to take this moment to give attention to why I have produced my body of work. First, I am grateful for the chance to share with you my own personal journey of introspection and healing. It is through our endless search for meaning and understanding that we allow ourselves to grow. And so my body of work is an intersection of ancient spirituality and modern science, which is coming across to become one again and the same as it was during the time of ancient civilization. My 4-part series on well-being is a window into how we as a society, as a world for that matter, can help instill the necessity for nurturing our mind for just a few minutes a day, which can make a difference. The invitation in all of this, in my work, is that mental illness should not be the norm. It should be the exception. Yet, with the unimaginable toll the COVID-19 global pandemic has wrought, the average person does not know how to be well, happy, secure, and self-sufficient. I mean this in personal terms, not economic ones. We need a new way of being happy. And the start of that happiness begins with taking control of your own mind. That is what my intention is, to develop my science and spirituality work to give people the knowledge and tools needed for resilience, to promote a proactive approach for mental wellness versus a reactive approach to mental illness. We can all flourish. You know those people that seem so naturally attentive, happy, and full of energy? We all have access to this way of being. Through my work, that is what I show you how to do. Each of us has the power and even the responsibility to create the mind we want. To put it in everyday practical terms, when human beings evolved on this planet, we didn't all begin brushing our teeth. Yet I know all of you watching and listening to me right now brushes your teeth probably a few times a day. You know, this is a kind of personal physical hygiene. So if you took your mind as seriously as you take your teeth, and if we nurtured our mind even for these few minutes a day in an intentional way, I have the strong conviction that this world would be a better place. So I invite you all to be part of this journey and make the commitment to spend as much time at least nurturing your mind as you do brushing your teeth. The data show just a few minutes a day can make a difference. So let's all make a difference by giving the long overdue attention our mind needs and wants. Attention that our mind deserves, not only for the